Welcome to our channel. Today we delve into the eerie and unsettling world of fog horror stories. Fog has always held an eerie fascination for us, a kind of primal fear. It's a thick, heavy blanket that obscures our vision, muffling sounds and distorting our senses. The stories we're about to share are steeped in this unsettling atmosphere. So, lock your doors, turn off the lights, and prepare to be drawn into the chilling depths of fog-laden horror. The night was young, but already the fog had rolled in, thick and heavy, swallowing the world beyond the windshield. A lone driver, a man named David, navigated the deserted highway, his headlights cutting through the white abyss. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic thud of the windshield wipers and the low hum of the engine. It was then that he saw her, a lone figure huddled by the side of the road, her thumb extended hopefully through the gloom. Her clothes, a pale blue dress, seemed to shimmer faintly in the darkness. David, a man of compassion, slowed his car. He'd heard stories of vanishing hitchhikers but dismissed them as mere folklore. He pulled up beside the woman, rolling down the window just enough to hear her voice over the wind. "Going south?" she asked, her voice a soft murmur that seemed to disappear into the fog. David nodded, a sense of unease settling in his gut. He couldn't quite place it, but there was something off about her, an almost ethereal quality. "Get in," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. She slid into the passenger seat, a waft of cold air accompanying her. She didn't speak, just stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the road as if in a trance. David tried to make conversation to break the unsettling silence that had descended upon the car. He asked her name, her destination, but his attempts were met with an unnerving silence. The only response was the rustle of her dress, a sound that seemed strangely loud in the confined space. Miles turned into minutes, the fog showing no sign of abating. David's unease morphed into full-blown anxiety. He glanced at his passenger, his heart pounding in his chest. "There's a diner up ahead," he said, his voice tight. "We could grab some coffee, get out of this fog for a bit." He looked over at the woman, hoping for any kind of response. But when he looked, the passenger seat was empty. There was no sign of the woman, no trace of her presence except for a faint, lingering chill in the air. David slammed on the brakes, the car skidding dangerously on the slick road. He jumped out, his eyes frantically searching the fog-shrouded highway. "Hello!" he called out, his voice a desperate plea swallowed by the thick silence. There was no answer. Only the echo of his own fear bouncing back from the impenetrable white wall that surrounded him. He drove through the night, the image of the vanishing woman seared into his mind, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden within the fog's embrace. The forest had always been a place of solace for the group of friends, a sanctuary where they could escape the pressures of their everyday lives. But on this particular day, the familiar woods had transformed into something sinister, shrouded in an unnatural fog that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. The friends, four in all, had set out on their usual hiking trail, their laughter echoing through the ancient trees. The fog, however, descended quickly, an oppressive blanket that swallowed the sunlight and cast an eerie silence over the woods. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something vaguely metallic that sent a shiver down their spines. They pressed on, their initial amusement giving way to a growing unease. The trail, usually so familiar, was now lost beneath a sea of white. Every turn they took seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the fog, further away from safety. "I don't like this," Sarah, the youngest of the group, said, her voice barely a whisper. "It feels wrong." The others, despite their outward bravado, couldn't help but share her sentiment. The forest, once so welcoming, now felt cold, hostile, as if it were watching their every move. It was then that they heard it, a low growl that seemed to emanate from the fog itself. It was a guttural sound, primal and chilling, that sent a jolt of fear through their hearts. "What was that?" Mark, usually the jokester of the group, whispered, his voice trembling. They huddled closer, their eyes scanning the swirling mist, searching for the source of the unsettling sound. The fog seemed to press in on them, suffocating, disorienting. They stumbled forward, their pace quickening, desperation lending speed to their steps. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by the distinct sound of heavy breathing. Panic surged through the group. They were being hunted, stalked by something unseen in the swirling white abyss. They broke into a run, their backpacks bouncing against their backs, their breath coming in ragged gasps. The fog played tricks on their minds, twisting the familiar shapes of trees into grotesque figures that seemed to reach out for them with gnarled, grasping branches. They tripped and stumbled, their fear propelling them forward. Through the swirling mist, they saw it, a fleeting glimpse of something massive and shadowy, its eyes glowing an eerie yellow in the gloom. The forest, once a place of peace, was now forever tainted, a chilling reminder of the day they came face to face with the horrors that lurked within the fog's embrace. The old lighthouse stood sentinel at the edge of the world, a beacon of warning against the treacherous rocks that lay hidden beneath the churning waves. For years, it had stood alone, its white tower piercing the sky, a solitary guardian against the fury of the sea. But the lighthouse harbored a secret, a darkness that clung to its aged stones, a presence that made itself known whenever the fog rolled in. Thomas, a seasoned lighthouse keeper, had heard the stories, the whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena. He had dismissed them as mere sailors' tales, the product of overactive imaginations and long nights at sea. But tonight, as the fog wrapped its icy fingers around the lighthouse, he began to question everything he thought he knew. The fog was different tonight, thicker, colder, almost sentient in the way it moved, swirling and pulsating around the base of the lighthouse like a living entity. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of salt and decay, a cloying aroma that sent a shiver down Thomas's spine. He stood at the window of the lantern room, his weathered hands gripping the railing, his eyes scanning the swirling white abyss below. The fog was so thick he could barely make out the outline of the cliffs, let alone the raging sea that beat against them. It was then that he saw her, a figure standing at the edge of the cliff, her silhouette barely perceptible through the dense fog. She was tall and slender, her long hair flowing in the wind, her back to him as she gazed out at the churning sea. Thomas rubbed his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. He had been alone on the island for weeks, his only companions the seabirds that circled overhead and the ghosts of his own thoughts. He blinked again, but the figure remained, unwavering, ethereal. He stumbled back from the window, his mind racing. He was a practical man, a man of logic and reason, but there was no denying what he had just witnessed. He had heard the stories, the whispers of the lighthouse keeper's daughter who had tragically fallen to her death from these very cliffs. They said her spirit still lingered, lost and searching, unable to find peace. He shook his head, trying to dispel the image of the ghostly figure from his mind. It was just the fog, he told himself, playing tricks on his weary eyes. He turned away from the window, forcing himself to focus on the rhythmic hum of the lighthouse's lamp, a comforting sound in the growing darkness. But as he turned, he caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. The figure was gone from the cliff, but now he could see her, standing in the lantern room with him, her back to the swirling fog, her ethereal form illuminated by the pulsating beam of the lighthouse's lamp. Her dress, a tattered white gown, flowed around her like mist, and her long black hair cascaded down her back, obscuring her face from view. Thomas stood frozen, paralyzed by fear and awe. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs felt like lead, his voice trapped in his throat. The figure turned slowly, her movements fluid, almost dreamlike. As she faced him, Thomas could see her face, pale and drawn, her eyes hollow sockets that seemed to stare right through him. She reached out a hand, her touch icy cold against his skin. A whisper escaped her lips, a mournful sound that seemed to pierce his very soul. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling tales. Stay safe and beware of the fog. The fog may recede, the sun may break through, but the fear, the chilling unease, those things linger. These stories are a reminder that reality is often stranger than fiction, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones we create in our minds, but the ones that hide in plain sight, shrouded in the swirling mists of our deepest fears. Until next time, sleep tight and remember, the fog is always listening.